So welcome to my bookshop, which is apparently what I live in now. I'm here for a book haul, as you can already tell from the title, and as you can already see from behind me, I have a lot of books to show you. I have bought myself a ton of books. I had some book vouchers to spend, so I went wild and then spent a little bit more. I have a bunch of books that were sent to me by the publishers for review, I think partly because a lot of them now have my new address. I've had some unsolicited ones, although I never show books in haul videos that I was sent unsolicited and don't want to read. Sometimes I am sent stuff and don't want to read it, and so just like pass it on to another reviewer or hand it into a charity shop. But if I do fancy it, and quite often I do get sent things that I do think sound really good even if I wasn't expecting them, I will show it in a book haul. And then I actually have quite a big pile of books that were gifted to me, which is incredibly overwhelming and I'm incredibly grateful for and just like in awe of your generosity. So a lot to share with you, and I guess that means we shouldn't waste too much time on introductions and crack on with the books. Let's start with this pile, which is the ones that I picked for myself. Okay, I'm just going to do this in random order, but the first one I've already read, and that is The Majesties by Tiffany Tsao. I bought this in one of my favourite independent bookshops in Edinburgh, which is Lighthouse Books. I would really recommend going giving them a follow, and if you're ever in Edinburgh, going and checking them out. They're really fantastic, and the booksellers there are so helpful. It's like they've read everything. They really feel like they know their stock, and this just sounded so interesting to me. It is about a rich Chinese family living in Singapore, and one of the daughters is in a coma where she's aware of her surroundings but nobody can speak to her, and she overhears that her entire family was poisoned by her sister, including her, and she's the only survivor although she's in a coma. So the majority of the book is her reflecting on her and her sister's past and their relationship and their lives and what perhaps led her sister to the poisoning of their entire family and murder of their entire family, including herself. And this is super good. I really like this book. I think it's really interesting, dark and literary and atmospheric. So if you want to know more of my thoughts, I actually read this one during my reading the lowest rated books on my TBR video, and honestly would recommend this one. So that was great. With some of my book vouchers though, I picked up Rosewater by Tade Thompson. This is a sci-fi novel set in Nigeria. So it's set in Nigeria in 2066, and a sort of alien capsule appears, like an alien biodome with life inside of it in the middle of Nigeria, and it's all about the humans' interaction with this alien life form that lands on the planet and why it's there, etc, etc. I've been really getting into my sci-fi recently and think this one sounds super intriguing. I think it's kind of like dark and creepy and mysterious as well, which is exactly one of the things I love. I feel like I've got two kinds of sci-fi I love, and dark and creepy is definitely one of those. So really looking forward to this. On the dark and creepy note, I have another one which I feel like falls in between those other two. It's a crime thriller which was originally written in Japanese, and that's The Aosa Murders by Riku Onda, and this was translated by Alison Watts. I have heard such mixed things about it, but think it sounds so interesting that I have to give it a try for myself and see what I think. It is a crime novel set in the 1970s in which 17 people are poisoned by cyanide in their drinks, and I think it's sort of through the interviews with suspects and people involved in what happened that day, trying to figure out what happened, and it sounds super interesting. We then have another dark book, and this one is Mistletoe by Alison Littlewood. It is a creepy haunted house horror type novel. It's about a woman who moves to a new town and a new home to start a new life, called Leah. So she's desperate to escape for Christmas, so ends up purchasing this rundown Yorkshire farmhouse, but when she arrives there is a lot of secrets tied up in this farm and its history, and I think it gets a little bit dark and a little bit creepy. I mainly picked this one up or looked into this book because Alison Littlewood had a quote on the front cover of Mexican Gothic, and I thought, ooh, if this is an author that reviewed and enjoyed Mexican Gothic, maybe I'll enjoy her book, and did think it sounded really interesting. So it was a bit of a roundabout way to get a recommendation, but I'm super intrigued. We then have a book which is actually going to be a reread for me, but I don't own my own copy, and that is Namaskis by Jacqueline Carey. This is like a big, epic, high fantasy romance novel. It is romance, but it's not romance in the sense that it's like some destined to be couple from the very beginning. It's the story of Nama, who is mixed race and also has an affinity with one of the gods in this world, which celebrates sexuality, and she's bisexual. She has relationships with men and women in this book, and there's lots of mystery and cult and danger and beautiful, beautiful writing. This is the only book by Jacqueline Carey I've ever written, even though she's written quite a lot of fantasy in this vein and gets very highly recommended. But I read it years and years and years ago, and a lot happens. It's a big chunky book, like even bigger than I think it looks, because the print in this is quite small and it's almost 700 pages. But I loved it and would love to read the rest in the series, but I feel like it's been so long since I read book one that I need to reread it, so decided to treat myself to a paperback of book one so that I could reread this and then hopefully carry on with the series, because I really, really liked Nama's story. She's sort of raised in seclusion with her mum, who's of one people from their world, and then as she becomes an adult she decides to go and explore the side of her heritage from her father, which is in more of a city setting. So love it, really looking forward to rereading it. On the topic of books that involve romance, we have a straight up historical romance, and this is The Duke's Suspicion by Susanna Craig. So I read another book by Susanna Craig in the month that's literally just happened, August, and I've not filmed my wrap up for August yet, but when I do I will be reviewing it in there, and I loved it. It was so funny and endearing, and I loved the characters and I loved the plot and the story. I really wanted to read more by this author and decided to pick this up, which is in the same series. So it's about a sister of the man who is the love interest in the book that I've already read, and she's originally from Ireland, as the brother is in the one that I read, but I think she falls in love with like an English duke, and it's all about their story. So I'm just really excited. I feel like this is very much in the tone of Tessa Dare. It's got that sense of humour going on the other book I read by this author, but also like the intrigue and like fun romp. So just really excited to read more by this author. I feel like she could be a new favourite historical romance writer. We then have a translated fantasy book, which I feel is actually kind of hard to come across. One of the prompts for my readathon, which is happening later this month, the Femme Fatale, is to read a translated fantasy book by a woman, and I find those quite hard to come by, so I'm really curious to try more. And this is one I've heard a lot about. It's not exclusively by a woman because it's by a duo, it's by a man and a woman, but there's a woman involved in it, and it was originally written in Russian. It is of course called Vita Nostra, as you can see on the front cover, and it's by Marina and Sergei Jachenko, translated by Julia Matov-Hersey. So I've got a few translated books in this pile, which is quite fun, but this is just one that like came up a lot when I was looking for recommendations of translated fantasy. I don't know much else about it, but it has very good ratings, so that seems like a good sign. It's about Sasha, who is on holiday and is asked by the mysterious ferret to undertake a strange task for him. Reluctantly she obliges and is rewarded with a shining golden coin. The more tasks she performs, the more coins Sasha receives, until Ferret instructs her, against the wishes of her family, to travel to a remote village and use her gold to gain entrance to the Institute of Special Technologies. So it sounds like it's set in a sort of like magical technological school, and there's going to be mystery and intrigue, and I don't know what else happens there, but it sounds quite dark because the final sentence of this blurb is the school uses terror and coercion to keep students in line. Should they transgress at all, their families pay a terrible price. So looking forward to reading this. We then have something quite different in tone because it's a middle grade book. And this is book 2 in the Arusha series by Roshana Chokshi, and this is Arusha and the Song of Death. I read Arusha and The End of Time earlier this year, a few months ago. I buddy read it with my friend Ashley here on YouTube. She actually sent it to me for my birthday, and I really enjoyed it. It was definitely one of my favourite middle grade fantasy novels I've read as an adult, and I've been really looking forward to reading book 2 because book 1 actually ended on quite a dramatic note, and I want to know what's next for Arusha. But this one is rooted in Hindu mythology, and it's all about Arusha, a young girl that turns out to be the daughter of a god, and this destines her to become one of a group of heroes who will save the world. And in book 1, she and one of her divine siblings team up to undertake some tasks in order to prevent the world from ending, but the baddie from book 1 is still on the loose, and they've got some more sort of dramatic things, I imagine, to take part in adventures in book 2, and I'm looking forward to it. We then have another book that I picked up in an independent bookshop, which was Portobello Books, another one of my favourite independents, and I would highly recommend giving them a follow and a visit. This is a book I picked up when I was visiting with my mum. We wanted to pop down there because my mum wanted to pick up a book. Actually, I should have totally hauled that book. I don't know where it is, because I plan on reading it too, but it's The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, which is the first in her dystopian duology, and I love Octavia Butler. So my mum picked it up because she loved Kindred and wanted to read that one, and then treated me to a book while we were there as well. So I didn't actually buy this one for myself, but I did pick it, and it's The Slaughterman by Cassandra Parkin. So I have read a short story collection by Cassandra Parkin in the past, New World Fairy Tales, and it's one of my favourite short story collections of all time. And I just came across this novel randomly on the bookcases in Portobello and felt like it was a sign, because I've never read anything else by this author. So I'm really hoping I love her novel as much as I loved her short stories, but it sounds super intriguing. It says, when her identical twin Laurel dies, 17-year-old Willow's life falls apart. With her parents' marriage faltering, she finds escape at her Uncle Joe's cottage. Even as they begin to know each other, Willow is plagued with memories of her sister. Then Lucas arrives in her life, troubled, angry, and with a dangerous past. Joe's cottage is idyllic, but the forest is filled with secrets. What is Joe hiding from her? What events have brought Lucas to her door? And who is the Slaughterman who steals through Willow's sleep? So it sounds kind of dark and creepy, and Cassandra Parkin's prose were just beautiful and lyrical in her short story collection, so I'm hoping that that all comes together in this novel. We then have a book which was a highly anticipated release for this half of the year for me, and that is Dragon Unleashed by Grace Draven. This is book 2 in the Fallen Empire series, and book 1 is Phoenix Unbound. This is also one of those fantasy series where the books follow different protagonists. So the protagonist in book 1 is not the protagonist in book 2, and the protagonist in book 2 was a side character in book 1, but a side character that was super intriguing, and I'm so excited to learn more about, especially given that there is some close ties to dragon magic in this book. In this book we follow Helani, a young woman that we meet in book 1 as a traveller. She travels with her uncle and some of her other family members throughout the sort of empire where magic is forbidden. And Grace Draven's books are also usually, almost always, fantasy romances, and I love them. She writes some of my favourite romance storylines and relationships in literature, full stop. So really looking forward to some dragons and some romance and some fantasy and some Grace Draven's writing, so that should be good. Well, this is another book that you will have actually already seen in a video, because I hauled it briefly in my reading the lowest rated books on my TBR when I also hauled the Majesties, and this I picked up in Transreal, another independent bookshop in Edinburgh that is another one of my favourites, and it specialises in science fiction and fantasy. This is a sci-fi novel, which, like I said, I'm really enjoying at the moment, but very different in tone to the darker ones I've mentioned so far, because this is a comedy. And I love comedic SFF. I love Terry Pratchett, I love Tom Holt, I love Douglas Adams. Like, they are some of the pinnacle of that genre for me. But one thing I find really difficult to come across is comedic SFF by women, and this is by a woman. It's by Valerie Valdez, and it's called Chilling Effect. And I was initially drawn to it because of the cover, where there's these like fun little cats wearing astronaut helmets. That's what drew me in. No shame, no guilt. Then I read the back and learned that it was a comedic sci-fi, and thought, yes, this is like exactly what I'm looking for. If I enjoy this author, this could be a fantastic new discovery. But it's about the captain of a spaceship whose sister is kidnapped, and she has to go on an adventure to save her sister, and apparently there's psychic cats, so it sounds like some good fun, and I'm really excited to give it a shot. We then also have another book that is related to my Femme Fatale readathon, because I picked it up exclusively to fulfil one of the prompts for that. And this is Raybearer by Georgia Nifueko, which is a fantasy novel by a Nigerian author, and one of the prompts is to read a book by an author from Africa, so this obviously fulfills that, and I've been hearing fantastic things about it. This has been getting great reviews, so much hype, and it really drew me in. I'll read you the back. It's about Teresa, who has always longed for the warmth of a family. She was raised in isolation by her mysterious, cunning and often absent mother, known only as the Lady. When Teresa comes of age, the Lady sends her to the capital of the global empire of Aristar to be chosen as one of the Crown Prince's Council of 11. If she's picked, she'll be joined with the other council members through the Ray, a bond deeper than blood. But the Lady has other ideas, including a magical wish that Teresa is compelled to obey: kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. Can we also just talk about this cover for a moment, which is stunning? You've got these lions, but then it also sort of makes the shape of a woman's face, just absolutely beautiful. Then we have one more book that I picked up myself, and it is one in a series I've been thoroughly enjoying, which is The Unmatched, which is book 5 in the Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place series by Mary Rose Wood. So I've been reading this middle grade series all year. I've read books 1 to 4 on Script, which is an ebook and audiobook app I am subscribed to and I love. But this is one of my favourite series / middle grade series of all time. I've absolutely fallen in love with it. They give me so much joy as a reader, and I really just felt when I was reading book 4 that these were going to be books I wanted to reread, which made me feel like I should probably start acquiring physical copies. So instead of reading book 5 on my phone, which to be fair, I don't love reading books on my phone, especially nighttime. I think it makes my brain too alert when I'm trying to get to sleep. I would pick up book 5 and then book 6, and then as and when I want to reread them, I'll go back and pick up book 1 to 4. But for book 5, we continue to follow the same characters from the rest of the series, which is a governess and her 3 wards, who were children that were discovered in the woods and taken in by this wealthy couple, this aristocratic couple. It's set in the 1800s to be raised, and she is in charge of their obviously education and care. But there's also a ton of mysteries around where these children came from, mysteries about the school that she was taught at, about the man that's hired her, and it's all starting to piece together, and I'm so excited to find out what is next in store. They're so funny, so heartwarming, just absolutely love them. Let's now go for the gifts, of which there are quite a few, and I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but so grateful. First up, I was sent 4 incredibly thoughtful books from my wish list from Olivia, which honestly, thank you so much, Olivia. These, I mean, we've messaged, but just so overwhelmed, like so kind of you. And in this selection we have How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell, which is the first in the How to Train Your Dragon series, and I am so excited about this book. I love this film. You all know I love dragons, so it's probably given I would love this film, but I've never read the book, and I'm really enjoying middle grade, have been for the past sort of year or two, so this seems like the perfect time to pick it up because, like I said, love the film, really excited now to read the book. As you probably know, it's about a Viking island where they don't get on with dragons. And dragons are a threat to them, so they hunt dragons instead, until this Viking boy ends up befriending a young dragon, and they become bonded, and it changes their whole relationship with the species. So I'm so excited about that one. We then have Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte, and I've never read an Anne Bronte book, but I think this sounds so interesting. I love Charlotte Bronte, and I know just because they're sisters doesn't mean they're the same, it doesn't mean their books are the same, but I've always been interested in reading something by Anne. And this one is all about Agnes, who's from an aristocratic background, but her family's lost all of their savings, so she has to become a governess. She ends up working for the Bloomfields, where her enthusiasm is soon dampened by isolation and the cruelty of the children in her charge. Agnes hopes for better in her second job, but when the scheming elder daughter, Rosalie, makes designs on Agnes' new friend, the kind curate, Mr. Weston, she feels herself silenced and sidelined. Becoming a governess is one thing, becoming invisible is quite another. We then have Catherine Arden's Small Spaces, which is a middle grade, but it's like a middle grade horror mystery. It's got a sort of recommendation of being terrifying and fun from the author of Goosebumps on the front. So I'm imagining it's kind of in the vein of Goosebumps. I know Catherine Arden is really well known for her Bear and the Nightingale series, which I haven't read yet, but really want to. However, this sounds so different in tone because that's more of like an adult fantasy, and this is obviously middle grade horror, but I'm so excited about this. And then lastly, another middle grade book, which I've heard incredible things about. I've heard like other booktubers really highly rave about this, and it's The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This one says that every year the people of the Protectorate leave a baby as a sacrifice to the witch who lives in the forest, but the witch, Zan, is a kind one. She rescues the children and delivers them to welcoming families on the other side of the forest, nourishing the babies with starlight on the journey. But one year Zan accidentally feeds a baby moonlight instead of starlight, filling the ordinary child with extraordinary magic. Zan decides she must raise this child, whom she calls Luna, as her own. As Luna's 13th birthday approaches, her magic begins to emerge with dangerous and thrilling consequences. Sounds so wonderful and magical, really excited. So thank you again, Olivia. We then have 2 books that were very kindly sent to me by Joanna, and Wow, these are such fun selections and I'm so excited about them. I was not expecting them, so thank you. I don't know which to show you first. We first have this gorgeous hardback. Like, look at this. This is a work of art. It also has deckled edges and just all together looks like the most beautifully bound book. The hardcover, oh, honestly, the design that's gone into this, like, kudos, they have done it so well. And this is Elizo by Darcy Little Badger with illustrations by Rovina Kai. And the reason I first put this on my wish list actually is because the author is a Native American and I really want to read more books by Native and Indigenous authors. She's a member of the Lipan Apache tribe of Texas. It says, imagine an America very similar to our own. It's got homework, best friends and pistachio ice cream. That is my favourite flavour of ice cream, by the way. There are some differences. This America being shaped dramatically by the magic, monsters, knowledge and legends of its people, those indigenous and those not. Some of those forces are charmingly everyday, like the ability to make an orb of light appear or travel across the world through rings of fungi. But other forces are less charming and should never see the light of day. Elizo lives in this slightly stranger America. She can raise the ghosts of dead animals, a skill passed down through generations of her Lipan Apache family. Her beloved cousin has just been murdered in a town that wants no prying eyes, but she's going to do more than pry. The picture-perfect facade of Willoughby masks gruesome secrets and she will rely on her wits, skills and friends to tear off the mask and protect her family. That sounds absolutely brilliant and there's lots of nice little illustrations dotted along at the beginning of chapters, so I think it's just going to be a gorgeous reading experience. We then have something else a little bit creepy, but this is an adult book and it's Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford. This is one that I actually put on my wish list, I'm pretty sure, because Jen recommended it. She said it was something that I'd probably enjoy and I really think it would be, and it really does sound like it. It's about a father and a daughter who live in a house in the wood. I believe they're actually aliens or there's something otherworldly, they're not human, and they sort of blend in with the world around them and try and live a normal life, but they're not normal until the daughter ends up in a relationship with a human. And she has to pick between her father and this human boy. So this sounds super interesting. We then have a book I know I'm gonna love, which was gifted to me by the lovely Maria, who has a Bookstagram account. So I will link that down below for you to check out. And it's Deathless Divide by Justina Ireland. And this is the sequel to, I've already forgot, what is book one called? I just read it and loved it. Dread Nation. Oh, I had like a real blank moment there. I love Dread Nation. I read it a couple months ago. It's a YA horror, alternative history set after the Civil War, but zombies basically, and I thought it was fantastic. But this is obviously the sequel. This is book 2. I don't know what really I can say about it without spoiling book 1, but I'm super excited to continue on with the series because I love the protagonist. I loved her personality and her like observations of the world around her, so I'm really excited to see what is next in store for her. Thank you so much, Maria, for this one. And then lastly, I was very kindly gifted 2 books by Rebecca, who also has a Bookstagram, so I will link that down below. Please go check them out. But honestly, I'm like never expecting these, and whenever they come in the post is so lovely. So thank you. And I'm so excited about both these books, as I'm sure you'll know why. The first one is because it's book 6 and the final book in the Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place series. I've already talked to you about book 5, which I just picked up, and then this also appeared in the post, which is wonderful. I'm so excited. This means I can binge books 5 and 6 and get all of the answers to all the questions I have about this series, because trust me, there is mysteries abound in this one. So this was such a good choice. Thank you, Rebecca. And then we have one I'm super excited about, and that is Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. I feel like Rory Power has become one of BookTube's most beloved authors in the past like year or so, ever since Wilder Girls, which so many people seem to love, and this is her latest novel, which sounds a little bit different because I feel like this is more on the contemporary crime side of the thriller horror genre, but I would love to know if you've read this one because I haven't heard much about it. So thank you again, Rebecca. Thank you everybody who sent me a gift, honestly. Overwhelmed, so excited, so kind of you. Just, yeah, I don't have words. We then have a pile of books I was sent for review by the publishers. So let's crack on, shall we? The one on the top of my pile was sent to me by William Morrow, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, and that is When No One Is Watching. This is a thriller by Alyssa Cole, who I believe is most famous for her romance novels. Alyssa Cole's written quite a few romances, and I have heard amazing things about all of them. People love Alyssa Cole. I've actually read a short story by her, but never like a full-length piece of literature. But this is a contemporary thriller, so a little bit different, which explores racism and institutionalized racism in our current day world, which sounds like it could be incredible. It's about Sydney Green, who's Brooklyn born and raised, but the neighbourhood she loves is being erased before her eyes. For sale signs are popping up everywhere, and the neighbours she knows all her life are disappearing. To preserve the past, Sydney channels her frustration into a walking tour called Displaced, A People's History of Brooklyn, and finds an unlikely and unwanted assistant in one of the new arrivals to her block, her neighbour Theo. But Sydney and Theo's deep dive into history quickly becomes a dizzying descent into paranoia and fear. The neighbours may not have moved to the suburbs after all, and the efforts to revitalise the community may be more deadly than advertised. We then have a middle grade book, which was also sent to me by HarperCollins, and this is A Clock of Stars, The Shadow Moth by Francesca Gibbons and illustrated by Chris Riddell. Oh, love Chris Riddell's illustrations, and it does have lovely illustrations of all the characters inside here, which I think is so nice. I have seen a photograph of the hardback and it's stunning. Like, this is going to be a beautiful final book, but it comes out on the 1st of October, so again, not too long to wait, and it's being described as Narnia meets Mary Poppins, so of course I was going to read this one. Wasn't expecting it, but I was definitely putting it on my TBR, so that was really awesome. We then have a YA fantasy, and that is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace, which was sent to me by Titan Books. This one's already out now. And this one is about a princess from the island kingdom Visidia, Amora Montara, who has spent her entire life training to be High Animancer, the master of souls. The rest of the realm can choose their magic, but to secure her place as heir to the throne, Amora must master the monarchy's dangerous soul magic. But when her demonstration goes horribly wrong, Amora is forced to flee. She strikes a deal with Bastian, a mysterious pirate. He'll help her prove she's fit to rule if she'll help him reclaim his stolen magic. So, magic and pirates? I'm here for that. Yep, that sounds great. We then have another HarperCollins title, which sounds absolutely fantastic. This is a YA book called Punching the Air by E.B. Zoboy and Yusef Salam, and this is a contemporary novel about a young black boy, 16 I believe he is, who is sent to prison, who's incarcerated, and the only escape he has, the only thing he has to turn to is his art, and it's all about racial injustice, the racism within the incarceration and criminal justice systems in the US, although it's not just a problem faced by the US, and this sounds like a really, really important novel. I love seeing YA novels that tackle topics like this because I think it's so relevant and such an important topic to explore from a young age. So I'm really, really excited to read this. I think it sounds really powerful and really interesting. We then have a book that was sent to me by Anderson Press, and that is I, Ada, Rebel Genius Visionary by Julia Gray, and this is a novelisation, a YA novelisation of the life of Ada Lovelace, who was the daughter of Lord Byron, but also very much famous in her own right as one of the earliest inventors of the earliest forms of computer. She was a scientist, a young scientist. This is the kind of book where I would have never thought of it, but now that I know it existed, I absolutely need and think that we all need. So I'm super, super excited. Then from the History Press, we have a book that I am so excited about. How many times can I say that? But honestly, that's the emotion I'm feeling right now. But it's Queer Folktales, a book of LGBTQ+ stories by Kevin Walker. So this is a collection of fairy tales which are all queer, and that just sounds absolutely perfect. Like, what more could you want? It says in the back that some of these are more traditional fairy tales, whereas some are more modern, so it's a blending of the two for a modern audience, and obviously exploring queer identity. So really, really excited about this, and I think it's a lovely, like, little bound up naked hardback, which is one of my favourite kind of book designs. Talking about beautiful hardbacks, actually, we then have You Goddess by E. Foley and B. Coates, which is a non-fiction book all about lessons in being legendary from awesome immortals. So this book is all about goddesses from different cultures. So we have Greek goddesses like Athena, but we also have Norse, Shinto, Yoruba, Sumerian, Irish, Egyptian, and with each chapter you learn about a different goddess and also like some of her strengths and how those can sort of be embodied by modern readers, which I think is such a fun concept. I then have two books which were sent to me from Book Break, which is the Pan Macmillan Publishing House's YouTube channel, and I'll link that down below so you can check it out. It's run by Emma from Drinking by My Shelf, and she sent me a collection collection of poetry called My Darling from the Lions by Rachel Long, which I've seen really good reviews for, and I've been in the mood to pick up some new poets recently and discover some more that I've not read in the past. The themes that this book deals with, because obviously it is poetry, is family quirks, the perils of dating, the grip of religion, or sexual awakening. These are stories that are by turn emotionally insightful, politically conscious, wise, funny, and outrageous. So I'm super excited. And then also from Book Break, I have The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel, the author of Station 11. That's her most famous title that I know has a lot of praise, a lot of hype, a lot of people love. I've never read, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure it's the kind of book I want to read right now because it's sort of set post-pandemic in a apocalyptic dystopian world, which maybe just not just now. I would really like to read something by Emily St. John Mandel though, since she is so highly praised, and this is her latest novel, so why not start with this? It is a captivating novel of money, beauty, crime and moral compromise in which a woman disappears from a container ship off the coast of Mauritania and a massive Ponzi scheme implodes in New York, dragging countless fortunes with it. I do love a crime, I do love a mystery, and I've heard such good things about the author, so I'm looking forward to this one. Then last but certainly not least for this video, if you've managed to stick around this long, is a book I'm super duper excited about, and that's The Memory of Babel by Christelle Dabos, which is a YA novel translated from French into English. This one is translated by Hildegard Serrel, and I have read books 1 and 2 in this series, which were A Winter's Promise and The Missing of Claire de Lune in the Mirror Visitor series. There's 4 books in total, which are all out in French if you read French, but this is just been released, book 3, and I'm not sure, but book 4 will probably come out next year, which is super exciting. This is such a unique series. It's one of my favourite YA fantasy series, and it just completely stands on its own. It's unlike anything else. So beautiful, and I feel like the covers very much capture that because these are stunning, and I'm so excited to have all 3 lined up together on my bookcase because they're just stunning books and they'll look so beautiful together. But I'm also really excited to read it, don't get me wrong. This one was sent to me by Europa, and like I said, love books 1 and 2. It's about Ophelia, who is sent away as part of an arranged marriage to a new arc in her world, because her world is made up of lots of different arcs, and on each arc there are the descendants of a different god or goddess, and they have different kind of magical abilities in different societies. So she moves to a society that's very different from the one she's used to, a culture that's very different from the one she's used to, and has to sort of survive all of the like duplicity and political machinations of those around her, and it's so much fun. Love this series. But that brings me to the end of my book haul. There are so many books here around me, and I'm really excited now that I can pop them all back on my bookcases and get them all organised and then start reading the ones I haven't started yet because they sound absolutely brilliant. I would love to hear from you if you have read any of these books or are interested in reading any of these books. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!